in the psychiatric community, in the substance abuse community, for these therapy-based models. And so we really are working with NYU Langone to create a training program, but also to create the technology that's going to train, thousands of psychiatrists and therapists that, are not already using these medicines. And so we think that if we invest early, that can be a clear potential competitive advantage for our company to have that, eventual delivery capability. So big move in the psychedelic space.
Yeah, it's really exciting. This stock's doing awesome today. And, Mindmed recently broke out, set fresh 52-week highs. What do you think are some of the factors that have been moving the stock so nicely?
Well, I think there's a number of factors. I think, I'd be wrong to say that the Compass Pathways IPO in the United States on NASDAQ has not had some effect on the overall market of other listed companies in the space. I think we're a close number 2 in terms of market cap, and I think people are looking, potentially at our valuation and going, "Wow, these guys are also potentially heading for an uplisting on NASDAQ. We should maybe start looking at that." So I think that's put a lot of more eyeballs back on us and what we're doing with our broad spectrum of a pipeline, sort of looking at various substances and not just one singular trial. So sort of gives like a little bit of a wider bet on the space. I think that has been a huge driver. There are things coming out every day on price targets around Compass and lots of momentum in the space. I think that's really going to be seen as the bellwether this fall, and I'm really excited to eventually get down there as well.
Definitely, like a lot of our viewers, they've been asking me to have you on here, so it's awesome that you're able to make it. So, recently you announced that you're working with Canaccord Genuity, goals of uplisting. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so look, I mean, Canaccord is a big investment bank, right? And they really dug in deep to work on some research with us to understand this company. They've really been working with us before we were public, and they were also a banker on the Compass IPO, and I think Jason Melbourne and Derek Ham and Dan Davio, the sort of our bankers, and Dan's the CEO of Canaccord, really see the potential that this could become a very big industry. And so we want to be working with the best in Canada, and they certainly are.
Fantastic. So before we start talking a little bit about the recent news, psilocybin, first let's talk about your thoughts on the potential for LSD and MDMA as treatments.
So MDMA and LSD, I think, has huge potential. The reason for that is if you talk to people in the psychedelic space, I think some of the most therapeutic and biggest breakthroughs they've had with psychedelic medicines actually have a lot of people say to me is on MDMA and LSD. Yet nobody went and did a clinical trial on it. So when the Liechti Lab originally proposed it to us, we were like, okay, that's a given. Let's do that. Let's get the first data on it. Let's file the IP against it and see if we can move this into a phase 2 trial. So I think we'll be beginning that in the fourth quarter. We'll be starting to recruit folks for that trial. These phase 1s go relatively quick compared to a phase 2. So, we're going to get the safety data that we need to move those into a phase 2. And I think that's really the sweet spot for Mindmed, right? Is get as many phase 2s up and going. Yeah. See if this stuff is effective. Once we know it's effective, I think we're going to be able to bring in larger pharmaceutical partners to support our trials and joint ventures and collaborations, and not be as dilutive to our early shareholders. And you guys have really been supporting us from the beginning. You were actually at our Go Public event in Toronto.
Exactly. Yeah, I was
one of the few guys there. That was like at the beginning of COVID, or right before COVID began.
Yeah, no, it was. And then we went to PDAC, and that was one of the first cases or one of the first big events where they announced it to everyone, but we're still here. We're still doing good. So
Yeah.
let's talk about now psilocybin. So, you guys do have a lot of focus, like we said, LSD, MDMA, and ibogaine, which is also really interesting. But with your recent announcement with the Lychee Lab R&D collaboration on psilocybin, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think what we're looking at psilocybin is there's been a lot of talk about psilocybin, right? I mean, Compass has one clinical trial on psilocybin focused on depression that we know of. We're starting programs, mainly in the LSD space. We have our ibogaine derivative 18MC, but we'd never had anything in psilocybin. And so what we wanted to do is look at, okay, there's lots of talk on why psilocybin's great, and we know that it is, but let's do a comparator study with LSD to understand the effects a little bit better between someone who's on LSD and someone's on psilocybin. And let's see if we can design better studies in the future, whether they combine these two substances into one. Do they, there's all sorts of things that we can do. This is still early stage research on the psilocybin front, but I think important work to do to start comparing the two, because they're different. They're different substances, but just because something's shorter doesn't necessarily mean it's more therapeutic. And I think we need to start looking at that.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I like about you guys is you just keep expanding your pipeline. Like, it's just one of the most comprehensive pipelines in the industry, I'd say. So what are you most excited about for the company for the next 6 months?
Well, look, I'm really excited to get the LSD anxiety readout on the phase 2 trial that's been ongoing for 4 years that we purchased as part of our collaboration in Switzerland. I think that's going to be really interesting to see an outcome on a phase 2 study. And that really is going to put us, I think, in line with where Compass is heading. They're in a phase 2B study right now. We could be in a phase 2B study on anxiety within the middle of next year or late next year, if all goes to plan. So look for a readout on that phase 2 study, end of this year, early next year. I think a big inflection point for us as a company.
Very exciting times. And if we compare the valuations, you guys are still substantially lower than Compass.
Yeah, I think that's a current truth. If we'll be head to head with them very, very soon on the NASDAQ if our application is accepted, and I would sure hope that we sort of close the gap a bit, because it's a pretty wide gap, and given our pipeline, I'm not so sure it should be.
No, exactly. I couldn't agree more. So where's the best way, or where should viewers go to get more information about the company?
Well, our website, mindmed.co, is really good. There was a great New Yorker piece today that tells a little bit about my story and why I started this company. It is out of personal experience. It's out of being the patient on the other end of these clinical trials, and I think it's important to have that. Mental health and addiction are big problems of society. I've been through them, and being the patient through them helps you create, I think, better solutions. And so check that article out. It was in the New Yorker. And Departures Capital is always a good source of good information and a good supporter of Mindmed and a friend of Mindmed.
Exactly. Well, thanks so much. And we look forward to having you back on, of course, and covering your progress as time goes on.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Have a good one, man.
Yeah, you too.